Got 3 words for you. The Black House.
Ah, yes, the Black House.
What a mission.
That was fun. That was if I remember, that was a designer called Jay Rowland and Rahman. They were working together on that one, but it was very much like, let's create a classic haunted house. Yeah.
And if you go back when you're dead, again, you get a completely different experience. You find out why you can't go through the front door. It's
Yes.
yeah.
Yes. Exactly.
All right. So after launch, then we had the issues, and I don't mean, I mean, the DLC. Yeah. Then it went buy to play, and there was more issues. Then eventually we got Tokyo Zone, and that brought with it I'm never quite sure, is it Aegis or Aegis system?
Well, Aegis is the pronunciation I use, but Aegis is something I think we've also said. So I don't know which one is the official pronunciation.
But that really changed things up, didn't it? Because suddenly it wasn't in Tokyo, they've got more health or they hit harder. Suddenly you've got this other mechanic, and a lot of people didn't like that.
Yeah.
I did, but I know that a lot of people, the Aegis mechanic wasn't particularly popular, which is why it doesn't find its way into Legends. But so,
Yes.
what was the thinking around that? Because
Sure.
I liked it.
Well, I was the game director at the time. Basically, the amount of synergies that people were building with gear had created such a large power gap, right? Such a large power gap that we didn't want the Tokyo stuff to become obsolete for those players. Like, they could just walk through it in a day. That was essentially it. And we'd spent a lot of time on that. I think we spent 8 months building that particular region of the game, and a lot of the effort, bunch of missions. It was a very much a showpiece of like, hey, here's all the things we've learned over the last couple of years on the project. Like, this is a big deal, and people have been waiting for this moment for a long time. Like, so we were concerned internally that people would just walk through the content and ignore it completely, like basically be able to kill their way through everything very quickly because of the power creep that had happened with raiding gear. There was a huge gap between players who'd been raiding and players who hadn't. People had just been following the single player, the single player, but the individual story of the game, right, and playing alone. And people who were playing in groups and raiding, it was a very different power tier. And so the focus of the Aegis system was to try and look, you still have to do this stuff, but I will 100% throw my hands up and capitulate and say, yes, it was way too grindy. I think that was part of the problem of it. It became too much of a. It was the intentions were good, the execution was poor. Now I understand why. So I understand why people were unhappy, and I don't disagree. To put it that way, I think
it did get a little bit grindy after a while, didn't it?
As I've gotten older, I've realized that one of the things you should do as a game designer is respect people's time more. And I think MMOs have this problem where there are people who are time rich, so they spend a lot of time and they will have the best stuff. And maybe you shouldn't worry about those people who will just walk through stuff as much, right? Maybe you should make it good for the people who don't have time to spend. So I would say it was a mistake, probably the Aegis system to go as far as it did. But I remember the reasoning pretty clearly because I was there. And I remember talking about it after we launched Tokyo and being like, maybe we've gone too hard here. And I remember we did tone it down a couple of times, I think, but maybe still didn't quite hit the balance.
Because wasn't there a couple of items, I remember reading, I never got them myself. There were 3 items in the game, weren't there? I think they were gold items, which came from, was it Nightmare Raid bosses or something? And there was, weren't they supposed to be put together or something? Was it the tetrahedron, I think, was one of them.
Yeah.
But they were never implemented. You could get the items, but I don't think you could do anything with them.
Okay, they were crafted. Yeah, I kind of remember it. I don't remember the intention with them actually.
Well, okay. So what next? Are there any plans? I get asked this all the time. What's next for the Secret World? Is there any plans for it going forward? What's the future?
Well, that's an interesting one. Secret World as so we have Secret World Legends, right? So Secret World itself not in active development anymore. Sort of we keep the servers running.
Yeah.
It'll be running as long as we feel it. The Secret World Legends, I think they turn on events and they run things in Secret World Legends every so often. It's still kind of in maintenance mode, I would say. The IP itself, we've had the park, we've had Moons of Madness. The idea is that the IP is one of our stables, one of the IPs in our stable that we can use. We're always looking for expressions. Like I know there's a Secret World RPG that's gone on Kickstarter and is starting
the
to
tabletop.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah, I'm looking forward to that.
And we're sort of we work with partners on it. There's I may have mentioned many years ago that Secret World was possibly coming to small screens for TV. Like people were talking about it at the time. That hasn't ended. There's still discussions. The games themselves right now we're focused on our Dune project because we have the Dune IP. So I mean, who knows? It's not out of our minds. Like in the sense of like every time we talk about what's next, we talk about the Secret World. It's one of the options, and what will we do with it, and where will we take it? But right now, there's no plans that I know of to continue.
Because as an IP, I suppose the depth and possibilities and potential of stories within that universe, it's almost unending.
Yes, it's limitless, right?
Yes.
I always had I always made the joke that like we had Anarchy Online and Conan and the Secret World, and they're basically three different time periods of the same universe. So it'd be fun if Conan was the forerunner to the Secret World, because Conan takes place in the Hyborian Age. That could be one of the ages.
Yeah.
The Secret World, and then Anarchy Online could be the far future. And how can we that was always just a joke that I made, but it's I'm not sure the Conan IP holders, which is now us, I guess, because we bought it. But I'm not sure they would be too happy with us conflating the Secret World and Conan. but I've always seen if we're going to do any game set in the modern day, we need to talk about the Secret World again, right? Like any time that we move within this time zone, this area, if something, originally Secret World. So here's a tidbit: Cabal and the Secret World were originally like a 1920s, 1930s game.
Okay,
that was the original idea. They were set in a time period, where people
a little bit like The Undying, then.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So it was much earlier than the current time period. It changed over time, but that was, I think, where it began as an idea. So
okay, so every game doesn't end up the same way as it begins. We've talked about how things change, and what about cut content? Is there anything that perhaps that was left on the cutting room floor that you thought it would have been nice to have that in?
Yeah, I outlined. I mean, when I was game director for the project, I outlined. We had the issues, right? And I think I outlined roughly 24 issues that I thought we could work towards, right? So there was we had, so I'm trying to remember, it's like I assume people could guess some of this stuff, but after South Africa, it was King Solomon's Mines was supposed to be one of the elements that was supposed to be in the Congo. The Congo was supposed to be the next big world area. Then there was Scotland, Avalon. There was the Sargasso Sea, an actual return to the Sargasso Sea. There was Guatemala and the Fountain of Youth. So there was a lot of stuff planned before this story would, reach its inevitable end. And because it's an MMO, it sort of had an imminent plan. And I knew exactly where I was going. Like I knew all this, let's say the high level. One of the things you do as a creative director is that you set these high level goals for what you want to achieve and what your message is, what you're actually saying, what the game is about. And I knew what that was. So it was easy to craft content towards that. And Josh Scrivener-Manta, who I was working with on the writing side, he was very good at like hinting at things and pushing things through the buzzing. So we kind of had a unified vision. So I think Guatemala got worked on a little bit. We have these viney dinosaurs, which you may have seen. These dinosaurs that look like they're made from vines and
oh, wow.
plant matter. And they were, and I think there's a T-Rex in one of the marketing videos, which was spawned from that. So you can actually see it online in one of the trailers. There's a T-Rex walking around. and it looks like it's wreathed in vines. And that was like these dinosaurs who had been drinking from the fountain of youth and were still alive after all these years. And that was set in Guatemala. So there's, like there was ideas everywhere that we could have built into, amazing things. So I regret that my biggest regret is just that we just didn't continue. Like it's that the game wasn't making enough money to sustain a full development team, unfortunately, because like issue 6 and issue 7, issue 8, issue 9, like I worked on issue 6 was when I took over as game director. That was that was when I was like, let's lean into this Indiana Jones feeling for this. That's one. Right. Let's really
issue 6 is Last Train to Cairo.
You Last Train to Cairo, right? And we had the time travel elements, and we were just having a lot of fun, like figuring out how to make this deeper and expand things and make it feel great. And then issue 7, it was like, we had Emma and I walk into Empty, and like this stuff was just, it was like we were really flexing at that point, like, hey, we can flex off our developer muscles and show what we can do with this IP and how fantastic it is and really touch people. I think I think the scenes there with Emma and stuff, it's just really like I felt like it was a great moment where we were building like this seasonal sort of like, okay, from issue to issue, we're building this greater story, and we're scaffolding ourselves up into this amazing sort of future. And then of course, like it kind of, it wasn't making the money, and people got pulled off, and suddenly, Funcom was like, make the next game or we'll go bankrupt, right? So
all right, it's called The Secret World. What are some of your favorite little secrets that maybe aren't on the beaten track? Like, for example, me, like I said earlier, with when you're dead and you go across the Langmore Bridge and you see the hanging people, that sort of thing. Just sort of the little tidbits.
I'm trying to remember. There's some. there's a. Yeah, it's been so long. I have to kind of remember because the game was built around the idea that there's a lot of, everything is kind of a secret, and people will find them. So yeah, it's a difficult one. I'm trying to really remember. I remember I hit a bunch, like, the computer interface. I hit a bunch of sort of jokes and comments. If you bothered to explore the computer interface properly and put in certain keywords, you would find out more information. Still, this one's, it's not that hidden from the beaten path, but I remember there's kind of the implication that Helen's husband is sleeping with Madame Roger, and if you go into his computer and you look up his assessment of her, I think he says that she's dynamite.
Right. I'm gonna have to go and look at that.
things like that. I remember writing those things in. I don't remember anything very specific, because I feel like the players were so good at figuring out almost everything that was hidden. Like even the investigation missions, every time we were dropping an issue and I was working with the guys and we were figuring out investigation missions to add, and then people would be like, these are getting too easy. We know how you think now. It's like, oh, okay. We tried. We thought really hard about it. So
okay. I'm going to skip over Cost of Magic.
Cost of Magic. So I remember when the designer. So one thing I'll say about Cost of Magic was, our game mechanics weren't up to our actual UX wasn't, our game wasn't responsive enough for the challenge of that. But as a concept, I think Bruno Parental was the designer, and he wanted to try it, and I said, yeah, let's just try it, right? We'll see how it goes. And we kept it in. We knew it was really hard, but we thought some people would be stubborn enough to get through this. So.
Oh, I tell you what, I was tearing my hair. I'm not great at the sabotage missions anyway. My viewers always joke about shotgun stealth with me. There's nobody's. If there's nobody left alive, there's nobody left to report back.
Sabotage missions were hard in an MMO as well. Like it was a real. Again, it was like one of these things where it's like, well, let's try something new, and maybe it won't be perfect, but at least it'll be something, right? Like I do. Again, I gotta say, it's one of the things at Funcom. I just don't think any other companies would have even tried. They would have just said, nah, we're not doing this. Focus on the kill 10x.
Yeah,
type thing.
It's certainly it was. It's easier to go and kill 6 boars, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah, I mean that quest never causes any problems for code.
All right, so let's touch on perhaps some of the spin-offs.
Sure.
The park.
Yes.
How did that come about?
So the park was a kind of almost a business decision from the perspective of management. We Funcom built all our games around Dreamworld, our Dreamworld engine. And after the Secret World, we had significant downsizing in the company. So our render team was like 3 people instead of like 30, right? Which it should be for maintaining your own engine. And I remember I was talking with the CEO and I was sort of making the argument that, look, we're we don't have the team anymore to support the Dreamworld engine, and our games don't look modern. This is 2000, I guess 2015, 14, I guess, and I'd just been taken off the Secret World. They were starting to, yeah, and Rahman had taken over as game director, and they pulled me back, and they said, like, we don't want you managing a team in the US from Oslo. We want you to focus on the Oslo team. So and then they said, and I said, I think we should move to Unreal 4. I think it's got a great renderer, great tools for artists and designers, and as a team, we'll be able to get things done more quickly with the smaller team, which is what we were starting to be at that point. And the management said, okay, we don't want to invest heavily in this yet because we don't know. And there was a lot. We were working on a Lego game at the time. There was a bunch of people working on Lego internally. They said you can have 3 people and make a game. And I said,
Gee,
okay.
thanks.
So they said, what can you do in 3 months? Was the request, like, what can you make in 3 months with 3 people? And I was like, we can make a walking simulator kind of style game, right? Like, that genre had been somewhat popular. Gone Home had sold 200,000 copies, I think, the year before. And I said, like, this is what we can do in the time we have. And I said, and I think we need to lean into one of our IPs that we have. So Secret World, and I obviously knew it very well. And I said, let's do Atlantic Island Park.
Because I love that place.
It's an amazing contained space with its own story. And what is the story we can build with the park? We can build the story, and in terms of influences, I literally just had 2013. We'd had our second child, and my wife and I my wife's a psychologist, so we'd been discussing postpartum depression quite a lot. It was a topic that I was fairly ignorant of, being a man and not very well read on these things. So we had this conversation. I said, this is fascinating. Like, I actually had no idea that this was a thing. And so I started to research that. And then, so the park kind of evolved out of all of these influences, and it was like, okay, let's build this. And so with a very good lead designer called Christian and an artist called Richard Court, we made that game. The structure of skeletons and bones of that game were done in about 3 months. And then we showed it to management at the end of 3 months. Like, this is what we've done in 12 weeks with Unreal. And they said, it's 3 months till Halloween. If we put 3 more months and we give you more people, can we launch this by Halloween? And I said, I think we can. And we did. So that was the game.
And you chose one of the most disturbing fairy tales in Hansel and Gretel.
Yes.
My word.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. There was a lot of like it's fun to write and try to be ambiguous and think about like how fairy tales really exist and what they actually mean, and and also just what's really going on here with Lorraine and Callum, like what's really happening, right? And I think there's a lot.
I'm still not quite sure what happens at the end. Is it real? Is it in her mind? I don't know. I mean, and I'm guessing that was the point.
Yes, I also think like the whole bee and the Secret World illusions were great for Secret World fans, and also a really good hook for people who weren't Secret World fans, because they were like, what was with that guy putting a bee in a jar on the desk at the end? Like, what was that about? And then I always felt like, players of the Secret World are going to jump in here and go, hey, come try this. Come find out what that's all about. So yeah,
I did try that in VR because it's an Unreal Engine. There's a little problem called Vorpex, which can inject, and there's a mod which allows you to play the park in. It's kind of a pseudo VR. It's a little bit hinky, but it works just about.
Okay. Interesting.
And it's more creepy the more immersive you get.
I can imagine. We Yeah, we did some experiments with VR, um, but not with the park. It was with Conan Exiles actually. So it was the next project after the park. We started to mess around a little bit with VR just to see, but we ended up dropping it. It wasn't. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. No, the park is great.
Well, I thoroughly enjoyed playing. I think I've played through it about 5 or 6 times now. I played through it on. It was the first game I ever streamed, and then when I got together with my wife, we had it on PS4, so she played through it.
Yes.
And then since I've started streaming The Secret World again, people have said, "Oh, we've never played the park." In that case, next stream, let's play through it and have some fun. I've done that a few times now, and it's great. And then it followed with Hide and Shriek, didn't it?
Hide and Shriek, yes,
that was fun. I liked that. It's very
cool. That was another experiment, right? Like the thing is, the US team. So this was the people who'd been working on The Secret World. They were gunning to do their own project, and asking, "Hey, when can we run up our own project?" And we were like, "Hey, why don't you make something small like Joel did last year with his small team? Why don't you guys do something small as well for Halloween?" And then specifically, streaming was taking off in a big way, and the idea was to make a game that was eminently streamable and also multiplayer. So there was a couple of like seeds there. It was like use Unreal, make something that's like fun to watch people playing on a stream, and make it multiplayer, like limited multiplayer. And I think they did a bang up job, really getting that out the door very quickly. I don't think it was ever expected to be a massive success. We were just more of an experiment with us, and we were learning about, like, from our, we consider like some of these games to be just like they're learnings for us. It's like, oh well, what we're learning, we were learning about streaming as an environment. We don't know much about it. What can we learn? Do people watch these games for this kind of spectacle? What sort of things will attract people? Can we do this with no marketing? Like, I don't think we marketed the game at all. We didn't spend any money, not 1 cent on marketing. I think the park was the same, not 1 cent on marketing.
I remember I did reach out to you guys on Halloween. I said, I would like to stream this. And I think you actually sent me a game key. So thank you very much for that. And I did. And do you know what? The only thing I think that I was slightly disappointed with, for a game that was supposed to be about Innsmouth Academy, it wasn't in Innsmouth Academy, and I was hoping that I'd be able to.
Was it supposed to be at Innsmouth?
Well, I thought it was supposed to be, and then it seems that it was somewhere else, but people from Innsmouth were contributing or participating in it, and I just thought it would have been nice to be able to run around the place that we knew, like with the park.
Yeah. Correct. I think if we'd set it in Innsmouth properly, we would have built Innsmouth though. The way that Innsmouth is laid out, I think we'd have done that more accurately. Yeah, I thought it was just we picked a different. It was like, this is another location that's in the Secret World, but not in the game.
Yes. I loved one of the things that really sort of I found very, very disturbing is the sound effects of the familiars in Innsmouth. That weird scream was just nasty.
There's some real, like, Secret World, I think, has
sound design was fantastic.
Some of the best sound design, some of the best monster design I've seen in games. I think really, really interesting stuff. The Spectres were one of my favorites. I really love the way that they look.
And to be fair, the cutscenes and the voice acting again was top notch. I mean, you got some decent talent as well. I remember Tim Russ was in it, Jeffrey Combs was in it. And there's a lot of really good voice actors that didn't just phone in their performance. Like you can see with some games, I won't mention any, but they've got big name voice actors, and it just sounds like they just phoned it in. Yes. But these guys, again, it was,
I think we work with a really good voice studio in the US, Green Street Studios, but we just we had just. Kirsten Geary, for example, the actress who plays her, she was in a very family friendly show, like a family friendly kids sort of show, and for her it was just like such an opportunity to be like the opposite character for a while, and she loved it. The snark, and she nailed it. Right, she was so good, it was so amazing, and we just like. The people like that, it was just a pleasure to work with some of the voice actors because they really liked it, because it wasn't it wasn't your average script. It's not like another shooter, right? Another military shooter where you're playing Sergeant Jack, and oh, I'm just gonna no. Like even the guy who's playing the sergeant, it's like
Yeah.
you're talking about your supernatural assignments and
Yes.
killing vampires, and it's like play it straight, but understand what you really are, what your character really is, and they
Yeah.
love that. They really love the opportunity to step outside of what was just sort of standard acting for them.
I remember one cutscene. I think it was in the Blue Mountain again with the sergeant, and you've got the cutscene for the mission, but then in the background you've got the sergeant talking to another secret worlder, sending them out on a mission, and I love that. Again, it's little details.
Yes, yeah, I think
You had some fun with that.
I can't take much credit for the writing in the early, like until before Ragnar left. Him and a guy called Dag Shever did all the writing, and there was a small team of writers, and they were really good at what they did. After they left, I took over that with a couple of other people, but it was mostly them who should have credit for the feeling of all the cutscenes in the first three areas.
Okay, so what's next for Funcom then? I know you've alluded to a couple of the things that you're working on, so here's your chance now to plug your next big thing.
Sure. We we got the exclusive rights to make games in the Dune universe. The obviously the big movie that came out last year, and then I think it was last year. Yeah, I was like, COVID, man, it makes everything weird. But
yeah,
I think it came out, and then there's a part two of that movie coming. We're making a game based in that universe. We published a game called Dune Spice Wars earlier this year, which is also like more of a callback to the RTSs.
Is that the 4X one?
Yeah, the 4X exactly, and that's more of a callback to the original Dune games, which are on PC. So we're making sort of more of the world of Dune and what Funcom does, which is like survival open world crafting, big, massively, massive open world with lots of players running around. That's our next big thing. On the Conan front, we have the Age of Sorcery for Conan Exiles, which is a big update coming in a few months, where we're introducing sorcery to the game, sort of the other half of the equation. So that's what's going on right now. And then, more interesting things to come in the next couple of years. I would say more things to be announced coming up. So,
okay, well, I suppose to close out then, do you have anything to say to the people going to be watching this are people that have played the Secret World since the launch. They're part of the 10th anniversary celebrations. So what do you have to say to them?
I would say thank you very much for being a part of the game, being a part of the community. I think the world is as rich as it is because of the players. I think there's nothing I remember more than when I was on the project, and then we would run the big events like the Golem events and logging in the Halloween events. I remember every year I took so much pleasure in writing like designs for like the Halloween events and figuring out how we were going. I remember Krampus and all of these things, right? I remember it, and it was the community that made all of that worthwhile. So I just a hearty thank you to everybody who has played, will play, and continues to play the game. I really appreciate all of you. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for talking to me this afternoon, Joel. And it'd be interesting to see now what comes next.
Indeed. Thank you very much. Cheers.